We are known to be in this society where lack of sleep is a flex. You work 18 hours a day, you hardly sleep. We have this "I'll sleep when I die" mentality. But what are the real health effects of having chronic sleep deprivation? Let's talk about it in this video. Number one, cognitive brain function. I don't even need to rely on science to explain this one. Let's talk about experience. We've all been there. Imagine you're in bed with your significant other. Maybe you're up talking to your sister, whatever. You're tired. And this isn't even 24 hours of sleep deprivation. Maybe you're just 3 to 4 hours outside of your regular bedtime. As you start to get tired, you're trying to hold this conversation and your words are turning into in your mind, you're saying actual words. I'm like, you're telling your sister, your significant other, whoever, this long story, and they're looking at you like, what in the world are you saying? You don't have the cognitive brain ability to formulate words. Like, your brain is literally shutting down. Think about times you have said, I'm too tired to think about this. So you don't have the function to be able to plan things, to problem solve, to be creative. All of that goes down when we are sleep deprived. Imagine going all night without sleeping and then going up the next day and having to plan an itinerary or do a crossword book or even have an intellectually stimulating conversation with someone. You're not going to be able to do it. And this is all because you haven't had enough sleep. So this can happen, like I said, of just losing a few hours of sleep in the night. Imagine chronically doing this over time and what that could do to you. In addition to that, when we have been sleep deprived for too long, we begin to hallucinate. So there's several regions of our brain that are affected by sleep deprivation. Now, piggybacking off of our brain function, number 2 is memory. So your memory is affected when you have not slept. The process goes, when we are asleep and our bodies enter into that delta state, that is where and when memories are being stored. So if you haven't slept, memories are not being stored. Studies have shown that students in college or students, anywhere that stay up all night and pull all-nighters do not perform any better the next day. In fact, they perform even more poor because while they spend all night cramming in this knowledge, they didn't get the sleep they needed to store that information to be able to perform up to par the next day. This is coming from science, but this is also coming from experience. I've spent many nights in college spending all-nighters, and I can agree that I did no better the day after staying up all night than I did the day before, and that's because I didn't get that sleep. On top of that, when you stay up all night trying to study for a test, and then you go into that test, you risk the chance of falling asleep. Again, speaking from experience, I once fell asleep during a final that I stayed up all night studying for. So it was like, what was the point? Now, I woke up in enough time to finish it, but the point I'm making here is it wasn't worth pulling that all-nighter for information that didn't stick the next day anyway. Now, when I went home and slept that night and then woke up the next day with a fresh brain, everything that I took on that final was all of a sudden like in my head. Like, I could take this final again right now. I'm sure I would do so much better. So it's not really worth it. While there are many reasons a person can have a poor memory, the next time you're dealing with someone that does have one, ask them have they gotten a good amount of sleep lately. And keep rolling with the last thing that has to do with our mental function is our mental health. So if you already have depression and anxiety issues, sleep deprivation is just going to push you off the edge. So it's definitely highly not recommended for people that are already suffering for those mental health issues. But if you don't have those mental health issues and you are deprived of sleep, you can begin to have characteristics of depression and anxiety. When you haven't slept well, we all know that one person that gets a little cranky and irritable when they haven't slept very well or is past their bedtime. So you can see how that goes. We don't have the patience for things, where we're more susceptible and quick to snap off on something. We feel like life is just crap and like everything is just gloom and like so it's just all these feelings we go through simply because we haven't slept. And a lot of times when people are in those phases, you just need a nap. So just take one. Number 4, let's talk about some hormones. So ghrelin and leptin are 2 hormones in our body that regulate our appetite. Ghrelin tells us when we're hungry, and leptin lets us know when we've had enough. Now, the problem is this function happens when we've had adequate sleep. But when we don't have adequate sleep, When we haven't had adequate sleep, our bodies actually raise our ghrelin levels and suppress our leptin levels. So it tells us that we're hungrier more than we actually are, and the part that tells us we're full isn't really functioning well. So you can imagine how that happens, or what will happen from that. We tend to overeat, especially at night, because we're trying to keep ourselves awake. We're trying to get our brain function back together. So that's where all this snacking comes from, because we're attempting to do something that our body isn't going to do because it hasn't slept. In addition to those two, we also have to take into consideration insulin. So insulin is another hormone in our body that gets released when we eat. And the purpose of this is to lower the sugar in our blood. That's insulin's number one primary function in our bodies. Well, again, this works well when we have slept. But when we haven't slept, insulin levels are actually decreased and suppressed. So what happens is our bodies, as we're eating, because ghrelin and leptin aren't regulating right, so now we're eating a lot, insulin isn't working a lot. So now we have all this sugar in our blood that's not getting filtered out. Because this is happening, we run the risk of type 2 diabetes because our blood sugar levels are raised, right? But we're also running the risk of becoming insulin resistant. So when your body isn't properly running insulin, it eventually lowers our body's tolerance to glucose, making us resistant to insulin, leading to type 2 diabetes. So this is all just from losing a few hours of sleep at night, and then chronically over time, that just, goes out of nowhere. So I'm definitely not saying one night of bad sleep is going to cause all of these problems, but we're talking chronically. So that means consistently over a long period of time. Number 5, let's continue with hormones. Now that we've gotten the food hormones out of the way, let's get into just our regular body hormones that are also affected from sleep deprivation. That's going to be our testosterone, cortisol, and the growth hormones. When our sleep is interrupted or never happens, certain hormones cannot produce and fulfill their functions, these 3 being one of them. So when our testosterone levels are not where they should be, when they're experiencing an imbalance, a lot of processes in our bodies are not going to be able to function properly, including our sex drive. So goodbye having an active sex life, like that's going to go down and out the window when our bodies aren't able to produce the hormone that stimulates some of that. Number 2 being the growth hormone. So you might be thinking, well, I'm already grown. What do I need this hormone for? Where actually the growth hormone helps with muscle mass. It helps putting that on. So if you're a bodybuilder attempting to put on muscle, or you're just someone who is trying to combat the natural decline of muscle mass, because yes, as we age, our muscle starts to break down at a more rapid rate. So we need this growth hormone to continue to stimulate preservation of the muscle mass and or growing it. So without this hormone, we wouldn't be able to do that. And then cortisol, aka the stress hormone, is raised when we haven't been slept. So our body releases higher levels of cortisol in our body when we don't sleep. And cortisol is important for a lot of functions in our body. But however, when the levels are high or in imbalance, we experience things like weight gain, blood pressure issues, blood sugar issues, inflammation, and metabolism issues. So all of this can happen just by having an improper amount of cortisol in our body. That can happen as a result of lack of sleep. Next, we have the immune system. So when we are asleep, our body kicks into protective mode. You can think of it as taking a shift, right? So when you're asleep, the guys that are up to take watch, to take their shift, they're building up all these things to keep invaders out. They're making sure that things are running properly so that when the next shift comes on, so when the next crew gets up for their shift, everything's taken care of. That's their role, right? So that's exactly what our immune system does. It produces antibodies while we are sleeping to help attack viruses and bacteria that naturally come into our system. So you can imagine when you don't sleep, your body didn't have the time to put together their defense wall, and it leaves you defenseless. So now you're more likely to get the cold and the flu and now COVID and all these other things, bronchitis, pneumonia. You find yourself continuing to be in a circle, should I say, of being sick. And that's because, there could be many reasons, but one of the reasons could be because you are chronically sleep deprived. Number 7, fatigue. So there's no secret that when you haven't had proper sleep, you're going to be tired. But the problem with this is being tired leaves you no room to do the things you want or need to do in your life. You have no energy for the gym, which can lead to health problems. And not just the gym. When I say gym, I just mean being active in general. Walking, doing yoga, swimming, just anything that's getting your body moving, you don't have the energy for it. So now your health suffers. 2, let's say you have a goal to learn something new. So this is great for your brain development, right? But again, if you don't have the energy to do that, you don't do it. And therefore your brain cognition and brain development can also suffer. And then lastly, your hobbies. So whether you like to dance, skate, bowl, whatever, all these hobbies that make you feel alive, make life worth living, you don't have the energy for it. And you know what suffers? Your happiness, your mental health, your will to live. So being chronically fatigued is also not great for us. Number 8, balance, coordination, and reaction time. All 3 of these are very low when we haven't slept. And it can be dangerous when you don't have the reaction time you need in dangerous situations. This is exactly why in car accidents, a lot of them occur from people that are being slept, that have been deprived of sleep. In fact, studies have shown that being sleep deprived is almost as equal, if not worse, to drunk driving. If you've ever been pulled over because you've been, swerving, and first thing the cops ask you is, "Have you been drinking?" And then you're like, "Well, no, I just haven't slept." But it's the same type of reaction time and the same type of brain decay when you haven't been able to sleep and you're trying to drive a car. You're swerving, you're nodding off, so it looks the same as someone that has been drinking, and it is just as dangerous. We can't swerve away from things that are coming into our danger, or we are falling asleep or running to the car next to us. So this is just as dangerous as drunk driving. So if you are tired, just don't get behind the wheel. Lastly, number 9, appearance. So if vanity is one of your things, I don't mean that in a negative way. There's nothing wrong with caring about the way that you look. So if you do care about the way that you look, sleep is going to be important to you, because when you are sleep deprived, you know what suffers? Your eyes. Your eyes are looking baggy. You're getting the black bags underneath your eyes. You are getting wrinkles prematurely, and your eyes are getting puffy. So someone that's in their 20s, 30s can easily be looking like they're pushing 40, 50. Not saying anything about the 40 and 50 year olds, because there's people in that age that look amazing. But I'm just saying, you can look 20 to 30 years older than you actually are, simply because you haven't slept. So if you want to spend money on anti-aging creams and find processes to reverse aging, get you some free quality sleep. Think about the 9 effects that I have just given you of sleep deprivation. You have to ask yourself, is it really worth skipping out on your sleep? And if you're also watching this video, I imagine you care about your body health and body education. So feel free to check out my playlist on I have plenty of videos in that category of body education to help you care more for your body and learn more about what it needs. So thank you for being here watching this video. Please share with someone that might need to hear this. If you did like this video, I really appreciate it if you gave me that thumbs up, and I will catch you in the next video. As always, don't forget to crush it.